Ooh. This is the 8-9 combo. I'm Brett McKay and Harry Jones. It's the first travel week of the Rugby Championship, and frankly, I'm looking forward to being able to catch up on what we've seen so far over the first two rounds. But we're both distracted by that little logo thing at the front there now, aren't we?
How's it, Brett? Simple pleasures, like Nikos Kazantzakis, the great Greek writer, said, that happiness is a domestic bird right in front of you. And just the idea that you would put an 8-9 combo logo before is going to make my life 22.6% better as we download that to the YouTube channel. We are YouTubers. Do you accept that? Do you confess that you are, in fact, now reluctantly a YouTuber and now have to learn the arts of video editing and such?
I've just done it. That's all I know.
First step. Hey, so I know we're coming down from the glow, the euphoria of Perth-Toria, Perth-Fontaine, or my favorite, Perth Elizabeth. It kind of makes you lisp when you say that, or Durban East. But now we could be brothers. So there is a permutation for you guys when you go to Argentina where you could literally put Razor Robinson in the hot seat and the New Zealanders out of their misery. If we do take care of business, you take care of business just so to rob the Pumas of any chance. And we take care of business as I'm live in person in Ellis Park in Cape Town. Do you? This is the question. In Six Nations, everyone has a second or third permutation. They go, not England, but I like Wales over Scotland over Ireland. So everyone is always invested in the games because they have a particular interest, except for Italy, on what happens. Do you declare that you want the Springboks to win the Rugby Championship, or do you still have allegiance to your Kiwi brothers?
I probably flip on this, and this is not the answer that you wanted. I probably flip, but right now I would be pretty happy to see South Africa win it just because they are an exceptional team.
It is said, it is pronounced, it is 8-9 doctrine. Thank you.
Good-o. It's episode 28 of the 8-9 Combo Rugby podcast, and we're really pleased to be brought to you across the Rugby Championship by Chasing the Sun 2, the wonderful 5-part all-access series documenting the Springboks' journey to their memorable 2023 Rugby World Cup win, and which is coming soon to RugbyPass TV worldwide.
Watch that, guys. It is the best, for real.
Simply head to rugbypass.tv and sign up for free, and you can watch the first series, the 2019 series there already. It's a great series, as we keep saying, mate.
We love our friends over at TNW, and they do great productions. I would say for all Aussie fans, don't be distracted by the recent losses. It's just a great story. As Brett keeps telling you, it's storytelling at its finest. Sports is a story. It's why we like it, because it's jeopardy, it's suspense. But inside that, there's so many little tiny games.
And genuinely, like, get into the series, and you'll forget that it's actually about the Springboks. It doesn't matter. Exceptional. Time to start the rugby week, mate, with our cheers and jeers from the weekend. And my cheers for you is our mate Michael Atkinson, friend of the pod, who just saved another potentially awkward Stan Sport handshake moment where post-match in Perth, he and Alana Ferguson had spoken to Joe Schmidt, and they finished up, and Joe said, "Thanks very much, mate." And he went for the handshake as Atco is throwing to someone else. And so I've got this fantastic screenshot of the moment where Joe is reaching in for handshake. Atco and Alana Ferguson are eyes forward. And fortunately, Atco saw it and took up the handshake before they cut the shot away. It was nearly a terrible moment again after the whole Aroni Noah situation back in Super Rugby.
That's brilliant. Atco is such the perfect man. He's Mr. Perfect. You know,
I sent him a message on Sunday saying, "You nearly had a moment here," and he said, "I'm so glad I saw that out of the corner of my eye."
No, that would never happen to Atco. He'll be the prime minister one day because he just reads the room, and he just you try to hate him. It's impossible. The guy's just so likable. Even if he misses tackles on the 8-9 combo team. Yeah. Cheers. Anyone?
Cheers me. Cheers.
So we're going to go back to Perth. We'll stay in Perth for a while. It's the curtain raiser between the All Black Springboks game. There was a big matchup between Israel Adesanya from New Zealand by way of Nigeria against the African King, Dricus du Plessis, middleweight championship bout. And he was escorted into the ring, this is why this is rugby, by Ibn Etzebeth and Siya Kolisi. Can you imagine, first of all, a better escort than Ibn Etzebeth in that crowd, and second, Siya Kolisi for that inspirational talk. So he goes in there, he takes care of business, he chokes out Izzy, who taps really quickly, I must say. And so they're having exaltation.
Breathe, to be fair.
Yeah, but you're supposed to hang on and even maybe go out like a champion on your shield. Like go to sleep. We've seen it plenty of times in the UFC. Izzy went out. Anyway. I'm sorry, but he went out very, very shamefully. But this provoked an incredible, wild celebration by Ivan, who was in that kind of area just outside the cage where you have, the VIPs. Okay, so my jeers is the security guard who lives somewhere in Western Australia, and he got the brief, we're going to go to the UFC, it's great, we'll have a good view, and you control the drunk middle-aged fans that are falling down on their tummies, and he'd probably take a wild swing at you. He's suddenly confronted with Ibn freaking Etzebeth, and his job is to control him. In other words, he's supposed to defend that maul because Siya actually latches onto him and starts mauling into him. They're just like he's literally losing his shit. And it's like this hand went up and go, brother, you're going to need a tool and an army. There's no way you are trained to control the Springbok.
It didn't go well. It did not go well. No, that's certainly true. Certainly true. That's a good one. I like that. And it was a funny moment. We are so much looking forward to this week's guest, a homecoming of sorts for a voice that we're very familiar to long-term listeners of our work and someone we've been waiting all year to hand his 8-9 combo debut. He joins us next.
Whoa. The logo's back.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
Very sharp.
This is.
This week's guest has forgotten more about rugby than most of us will ever know, and after a 3-decade career with News Limited, in particular the Courier Mail in Brisbane, now spends his time providing media expertise and tour stories upon the tight ship that is Queensland rugby. Long-term listeners will remember him from the instant reactions of the past 2 years when we're at the helm of the Raw Rugby podcast. And it is with great pleasure that we welcome to the 8-9 combo for the first time, the great Jim Tucker.
Bula bula.
Well, Brett, that's a great introduction. Harry, wonderful to see you in full swing. I don't think you've lost a game since I last saw you, Harry, so you're just smiling every day.
There might be something in that. I remember that, meeting you in Lyon with your tour group, and you were having to console as well as, tour them through France. So good to see you in happier times.
Yeah, that was good. We got through. I've got a photo on my phone, the carnage at sort of 5 a.m. with the empty the wine casks ripped to shreds and a couple of little short champagne bottles. We had a lovely South African family on the trip, and they were incredibly generous the whole way through, and they were happy to provide champagne for the whole tour group just to celebrate their good fortune. So
awesome.
There you go.
There you go. Everyone should absolutely go back and find the test match post-mortem from the weekend, not just for the recap of our first thoughts after the test in Auckland and Perth, but also to see how we're doing without Jim this season post-match, which, maybe the numbers suggest Jim's been holding us back, Harry. I don't know.
Oh my God, that's harsh. 10,000 views, it's true. But I always thought Jim won the headlines. And probably you just haven't had it back because you want to win the headline war because he is the genius.
That's the expertise, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. How have you seen these last week and a bit for the Wallabies, Jim? What's been your thoughts from the outside looking in? You would have been there in Brisbane, no doubt.
Yeah, a couple of big takeaways. Like I've got to give it to the South African fans, like to have 50,000 plus at 2 tests in a row, and to have the energy in the stadiums of South African fans. I've seen many of the Bok Wallaby tests in Brisbane, but never one like the one in Brisbane, because there were legitimately 15 to 20,000 Bok fans there. Who'd come from all parts of the eastern seaboard of Australia to celebrate their World Cup winners. Like it was like a coronation for the team, the way they sang the anthem at the start, the way both ends of the stadium just went off as soon as South Africa got on a roll. It was impressive. Like even if you suffered through the Wallabies losing, you could really appreciate what the South African rugby fan had seen in their team in their country through that World Cup. So that in itself was fantastic. Probably the harsher realities was probably seeing on the weekend the difference between the All Black performance and the Wallaby performance.
Yeah.
TJ Perenara going down that little short side, threads a brilliant pass through to his winger, Jordan, to score the try. Same situation. Nick White has two guys outside and Cheslin Colby, bang, snaps the intercept and off he goes. Like, they're moments of precision that you have to get right. Like, another one, the kicking of the Aussies has been poor in both tests. Then you look at the All Blacks against Argentina, and then you see Barrett just chipping that beautiful little ball over the top to set up the try. And here's the Australians, you got Wright trying to kick across field to Kellaway and mucking that up when that should have just been pressure applied, Harry. You just you're finally down in their territory, just keep applying the pressure and the wet ball test. And that was just unforgivable, really, in the circumstances. So we're not reading the game well enough, some of the Aussies, and certainly the kicking game just hasn't been up to speed.
Yeah, you saw that the contrast there with Andre Pollard coming on at, I think, minute 60, and he and Manny Lubbock play off each other for a while. And he puts, Andre Pollard puts this kick on the toe perfectly to Peter Steph Toy, who just has an engine that doesn't stop. You know, it's deep in the match. I think it's 73 minutes in. And he's just, you can tell there's only one player who's going to catch that. It's like in the NFL, there's a route they do where they say it's an out route. I think it's and the only thing that can happen is your wide receiver catches it or it's gone. There's no chance for the receiver, for the defender. In contrast, you saw so many times, I don't know, Brett was probably dying every time it happened, that the Wallabies would put the kick on the cross kick, and you could just see that Fussy or Colby or somebody was just going to take it easily, like a catch in cricket where you're like, it's going to be an out. I'm actually interested in your contrast there of what could be. I think what the Springboks series here showed Wallaby fans is something good, which is what can be. It wasn't that long ago, 2017, when the Boks were in the doldrums. So you can see what and there were tests played in Australia where there weren't 50,000 South African fans coming, and they already were living. So you can see that the energy around that, and there's so many Aussies that live abroad. There's almost so many Aussies that are maybe just checked out a little bit right now. There is such a good story they're waiting. And then on the field, I think you see small things, correctable things. Kicking game is a thing that's correctable. It's something in your own control. It's like serving in tennis. There's no one else that can affect that. You can create the space. Joe Schmidt's perfectly good at that. There was a 50-22 that he put on, I forget which test it was, where it was a set play.
In Perth, off the back of the scrum was Tom Wright.
And it was a perfect looking play. And more of that. Aussie fans need to sort of grow up a little bit and say, kicking is not bad. The New Zealand kicked 35 times and it looked good, because they had varieties of kicks and they created those. So I think on the one hand it's sad, on the other hand it's super encouraging that you can see that even in the space of 4 years, a team can go from the dregs to the penthouse.
Yeah, it was interesting because Schmidt he was asked about the cross kick as a tactic. Like it was clearly a tactic, and he confirmed that it was, and he explained that they thought that they'd seen things in Brisbane, and that told them that cross kick was a way of essentially isolating the outside men. And so it was definitely a tactic, but then it becomes a skill thing. It becomes an execution thing, because if they used it 3 times, at least 2 of them didn't hit the mark. At least 2 of them went straight to South African wingers. So it's an interesting thing, but the flip side of that is that I don't mind that they're trying things based on what they've seen in the first game. So they're trying already to work out how they can try and exploit some space, but then it becomes the familiar Jim skill and execution error that we've seen way too much of in recent times.
Yeah. So
Jim, again, late in the game, Harry, you'd recall.
Yeah, go ahead.
So late in the game, you recall when the Wallabies did have that 5 metre line out, and then they got the scrum, and Lukan Salako-Loto just shelled it in front of the post, and then pressure gets relieved and you come back and you think, oh, that's a little thing if you could hold on. But that's a test match in the wet. Yeah. You have to take those little bites of possession and turn them into something more when you have that field position. Because as sure as anything, when South Africa got back the other end of the field, Malcolm Marx is drilling his way over like a water buffalo, and like you just can't stop it.
Yeah, and so that's the thing, right? People said, there's a couple of chances you drop them in a test match. You have to create more. So you could look at the 9 tries that South Africa scored over 2 matches, and there was clearly 6, I think, clear line breaks that didn't get finished off. Some of those were just flat out drops. Sasha just dropped it cold, right? He runs in easily. But so the point is you have to create more. Like if you can create 16 opportunities and then you get 9 out of 16 is not the worst rate. But if you have only creating 3 line breaks, then everything becomes everything. And you're probably going to drop it more, actually, because you got more tension. I think somehow getting into the 22, which was not a problem against Georgia and Wales. The problem there was letting in a couple of easy tries to each nation. When you play South Africa, when you play maybe Argentina, but certainly New Zealand, all those things you give up are going to be finished, or 9 out of 16 will. But are you creating enough? And so that's the question we have for Joe Schmidt's offense. His attack scheme does not look like it's bedded in yet. I don't know what the gum is there, or is it just that rush D by the box, which is one of the best Ds that's been around for in rugby. But what do you think? Is there a way?
Yeah.
Is there a way with this particular personnel to create 10, 5, 6?
Yeah. 3 would be a starting point. It's an interesting point that you make about the rush defense, though, because Argentina don't employ it, and so although maybe they will. So does the Wallabies attack suddenly look better because of the lack of the rush defense? And so then it becomes a question of, all right, we're going to come up against teams who know that if they can get up in our face, that's going to shut the attack down. So how do you overcome that? So I'm sort of interested to see it either way there. I'm interested to see whether Argentina do say, let's just get up in front of them and see if we can shut them down. Let's effectively attack with our defense.
Right.
Equally, I'm interested to see whether the Wallabies can try and rediscover the shape that they did show against Wales and Georgia in July, against defences that were more inclined to sit back. And the Wallabies aren't, rush defending themselves. So not everyone uses it. Not everyone does it all the time. So that becomes the interesting thing, I think, here, is to see whether there is. Already we know there's going to be changes. Hunter Paisami's not going to go to Argentina, and he may not be ready again until potentially the spring tour. So there's going to be a midfield change, and so that's going to have an impact.
Sure,
there's no question about that.
The igniter of the attack, Jim. Who's the number 9? Who's the starting 9 for Joe Schmidt?
That's really a key question.
I thought
Tate McDermott added a bit of extra speed to the game in Brisbane in that last 15, 20 minutes. I thought that gave the Wallabies that little bit of chance to catch the box out of their comfort zone a little bit. It was only a glimpse, really. I just think for all Jake Gordon's good traits, it's just at a slower speed than it needs to be. Yeah. And I think for the Wallabies to play well, they got to play quicker, so they can capitalise on what quick ruck ball they get. I think Nick White, very serviceable. I guess we're talking bias. I think Tate McDermott could be the guy there. I think he would have played more if Tom Liner had been fit. His hamstring has really been a little bit confounding. He could well have started in Perth, and then you might have had Nick White and Tom Liner, or you might have had even Tate McDermott and Tom Liner. I'm not sure, but I think it'd be good to see more of Tom Liner and see what he's equipped with. It's just tricky. Like we'll always talk about halfbacks and tens, but it's all made by the forward pack in front of them, and the Wallaby pack against the box just hasn't got any sort of ascendancy to give any sort of armchair for the 9 and 10.
You know, it's sort of two sides of the coin there, right, Jim? You know, you've been at the Reds. The Reds created some of the quickest ball in Super Rugby, and so you have the idea of creating the quick ball, and then who's the best 9 to take advantage of it. And so under that theory, and then it looks like Joe is trying to do that. He wants to build more rucks than the other top teams. That's his style. He did it at Ireland, but it doesn't matter who the 9 is if your pack's getting rolled, right? So the first step is always the pack. And there's no team better than to provide a metric or a benchmark against than the Box. Even if they run out their third string, it doesn't matter. There's a quality to what that forward pack does on the field that would have given Joe Schmidt a lot of information about his guys. I mean, really, I think he would have come away thinking, thank you. Now I really know who's who and what's what. I have got a good view of Carlo. I can see what Uru did. I can maybe have a better view of Nick Frost. These are all like valuable markers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm still interested in 9 though, because I think then let's say you can fix it against Argentina. Then who is the one that rolls and gets that thing rolling? Is it more about the accuracy of the pass, which is not Tate, or is it the quickness to the ruck, which it is Tate?
I still think he goes back to Jake Gordon, because I think these 2 tests against the Box showed that he likes the speed impact that McDermott brings.
I see on the bench.
Yeah. So he's saying, let's get our systems and everything in place. Let's get the platform right for the first 50 minutes, and then let's try and up tempo essentially off the bench. And
I always wonder if he's like, I always want to say Joe Schmidt, not for the New Zealand stint, which was shorter. I look at Ireland and I go, I think he's trying to find the people. He was there at Ireland so long that we know archetypes. Like, CJ Stander is his 16 carry, 10 tackle a guy. So he looks like Harry Wilson might appeal to him and not so much to Eddie Jones or Dave Rennie. And then you have 9, which was Connor Murray. Connor Murray was never the quickest guy.
No, and that's
just a thinker,
Yes. So he started Connor Murray almost exclusively through his island reign. But you look now and Andy, so he wanted the rock solid up front. You look at Andy Farrell now and he's saying, righto, well, I can get impact from other players. What I need is the rock solid conductor in the middle. So he brings Murray off the bench.
Interesting.
So Murray's still playing the same role. He's just suddenly got 2 digits on his back.
True. Hey, the problem here on the pack is who can he use? It's not like he has an inexhaustible supply, a mystery rugby tribe up the Darling River somewhere. I mean, like, where is he going to discover?
You don't even know where the Darling River is.
I do. I've swum in it with the crocodiles. I rolled with the crocodiles. It's illegal now. Now, Jim, where's he going to find his tight 5? Because you need more than 2 or 3 sprinkled. You got your Valentinis, you got your Wilsons, you got your LSLs, but you need more.
You do. I think in terms of returning players, I think for the 2 All Black tests later in the series, I think they'll get Fraser McRide back from his broken thumb, and I think Liam Wright from his bicep tendon. I think he'll come back into the flow. Losing those 2 guys who played between them 2,000 minutes during Super Rugby without missing a beat, and then both getting injured in the early test, that certainly knocked around the back row as the strength it could have been. But the tight 5, it was quite calamitous, wasn't it? Seeing non-contested scrums in a test match, and you couldn't say anything about it really. Like you could almost put a centre in there packing it front row. Like it was absolutely crazy. But it doesn't get better in time. Like James Slipper has been an unbelievable servant for the Wallabies, but he is quite near the end of his career, Harry. You'd have to say, he's an unbelievable servant. But come next year, he might be holding the bat up and saying that's it, and then you're looking for another prop of substance. One thing that strikes me when I look at New Zealand, you get someone like Tamati Williams coming into the side, the whole pack's set, and you put one new figure in there and he gets a chance to learn from the other guys. And the Springboks, even on this tour, put one new guy in there and they're playing with the Etzebeths, they're playing with the Marks, they're playing with the experience is vast. And with the Wallabies, they've got 3 or 4 or 5 different moving parts for new players, like Nasser coming in, Blythe coming into Type 5. That there's not too many stable players who've been there a long time with set combinations. So everyone's trying to learn on the job at the same time. And it's a really hard thing to do against the quality of the box.
Schmidt's used 40 players already in 5
Yeah,
tests.
that's astonishing. Yeah.
Of those guys, who do you think has emerged, put their hands up a little bit? And we can cover maybe the ones that didn't, but what are the bright spots that you found in this series?
I think you made a really good point, and I can't now remember whether you said it Saturday night or whether you've said it in chats subsequently because we talk to each other so often, that McWright's stocks rose without playing.
Just by not being there. Yeah. You saw a difference of not having on the ball guy. Yeah.
And it's in the great Australian tradition of getting better with absentia. And there's so many players that have gone overseas, absolute journeyman players, to be fair, that have gone overseas and suddenly get randomly thrown into the mix because they're now just overseas and therefore they must be better. McWright is sort of proven to be essentially indispensable, and that's not to try and downplay his impact over the first 3 tests, because he's been Australia's best this year.
It's important for placement. Fraser knows how to not get sucked into a tackle game. So Carlo had to make a lot of tackles, and a lot of broadsheets that were saying, look, he had 25 tackles, 31 tackles. But listen, you don't want your on-the-ball fetcher guy getting tied up in the tackle zone. It's the only way we defended against David Pocock was to make him a tackler. So he couldn't be a jackler. And he couldn't even be a feint jackler, like, I'm going to go. So you want to have that guy sitting, waiting. There was a moment that you isolated, Brett, where there was a tip-off from Bobby V
from Valentini to Harry Wilson. Yeah.
Harry Wilson. And it got that extra 2 or 3 meters, but it was a nothing 2 or 3 meters because waiting for him, and there was a warm embrace of Peter Steph Totoy. He was just waiting for that moment. He actually resisted the first tackle. He didn't want the first tackle. He stood outside it. And so Fraser's really grown in the ability of picking which one out of 3 he goes for, and thinking of the picture that the referee will see of his exact placement, all that stuff. He's a clever footballer. That's fair enough. Did you see anything out of the front rowers? Were there any front rowers like Josh Nasser kind of appealed to me? I thought
Josh Nasser, surprisingly so, I thought stood up really well. In the face of a fairly brutal front row, he showed that he doesn't look out of place at this level, and that Matt Fessler has had a very, very strong Super Rugby season, was good through the July tests, was right to start last week in Brisbane. But Nasser coming on up in Brisbane last week, starting in Perth on the weekend, has just looked pretty solid, Jim, I think.
He has been good. He's well regarded. But he's a guy who, if you said 50 first-class games, that he might not even be there in terms of top-level games, 50 games. Yeah. So he's still a very young front rower, but I think he's got a lot of potential. He's got a bit of size to him. He's certainly up for the contest, and he got through a wonky one the first throw in with the slippery pill, but came back quite nicely. I think Lucan Salakai-Loto has stepped up in terms of volume of work. Yeah. If they get the best pack, he might still be a 6, and then suddenly you're getting a bit of size in the pack. If you get 2 big big locks, where you get perhaps Will Skelton back and put someone else in the second row. So Salakai-Loto,
which is probably Nick Frost, because I think he in Brisbane rediscovered the form that he finished last year, and probably hasn't shown in Super Rugby this year, to be fair. He sort of was on the bench and not really doing a lot for the Brumbies by the end of the season, but he was really good last week in Brisbane.
That also makes a really big pack, guys. So you have Josh Nasser, Frost, Skelton, LSL, Valentini, and Wilson. That's a big pack, and the wingspan is so important in stopping mauls. I looked at that and thought there's just not enough people who can go far enough around and can reach through. And so when you have short arm pack and you're trying to defend a maul like the Springboks have, it just looks futile. There were moments where you just thought there was one where they went 20 meters and they just carried. I mean, it didn't turn into the try, but it carried it for 20 meters, and it was like they had infinite options because there was just no one like an Arnold or somebody like a Skelton who can kind of burrow through.
There was one where they carried similar distance, 15. It might have been the same one where they carried 15 to 20 meters, and Angus Blythe even had his arms on the ball carrier's shoulders, and he couldn't get closer. But equally though, without a couple of front rowers, without a couple of props, which by that stage they had one, they really didn't have that front pillar of pushing. So the maul defense was all over the place because no one really knew what they were doing. It was.
I saw Max Jorgensen.
That's probably one of those. That's probably one of those skill areas, isn't it, Harry? Where you come into camp, you just have that week, 10 days before the first test against Wales, and that's probably going to be an area you just need to take a bit of time to get right, isn't it? With that,
it's going to be
defense. It doesn't come instantaneously.
It's sequential, right? It's very
going to be a Laurie
sequential.
Fisher. That's going to be a Laurie Fisher session this weekend coming up, but no doubt at all before they head to Argentina. Laurie
the Jason Ryan scheme has these waves of formations. They're almost like sequential, like dominoes. And what they do is they, you can see when you have a guy like Ben Jason Dixon, who's really had a great game in Brisbane, and he would find a specific player, right? He was looking for Harry Wilson, and if he could find him, great. Then he was also trying to get two. He was trying to get Bobby and Harry. If he could tie both of those up on the open side of the mole, it was pretty much good night already, because then there was no way for them to get out and rearrange. They were stuck where they were, and they were probably backpedaling. And so what Jason Ryan has his guys and the All Blacks do is they hang back. They let you have a couple of meters. It's okay. You're not going to mull all the way, right? And then they apply themselves in just the right spots. And somebody's calling that. I'm not sure who it is.
They get themselves set, and then there's almost a second shove almost. Yeah, you're right.
The real specifics, Harry, you've got to be a very finely tuned, well understood outfit to do that. That's real skill when you're doing those little fine points.
And you're not doing that with uncontested scrums with no props on the field. That's certainly not going to happen. I think I wrote for RugbyPass this week that by the end of the game, the Wallabies maul defence was held together by hope and desperation, because that's sort of what it amounted to. So it was. We've mentioned Will Skelton there. I mean, I'm not confident of him coming back to Australia. He might join them in Europe at the end of the year. I don't think we'll see him in the Rugby Championship, and nothing that Joe Schmidt has said about this fills me with any confidence. I don't. I actually feel like Schmidt's almost given up on trying to get him out here for it.
Jim,
that's just the indication. It's just the indication he's giving about how difficult and complicated it is.
You have good sources, Jim. What's the story on Will Skelton? It's actually a bizarre story over the last 12, 15, 16 months. Comes in captain, inside, outside favor. There's always the suggestion when you're dealing with French clubs that there might not be, what we're seeing may not be what is going on. What's the tussle there?
Oh, the one of the tussles always is the contract is framed. If you want to go and play for your country, you're going to be on a significantly reduced contract. Like Will Skelton might have an enormous amount of money, but that is in contract situation. So his French club doesn't care less if he plays international rugby. So he's got to balance that up. I think he was a very positive contributor at the World Cup. People respected his leadership. We knew how massive he was, and I think we're all that little bit frustrated that he doesn't have that run of 10 or 12 tests in a row where he just becomes that the whole engine room of the Wallaby pack. I think I'm leaning Brett's way in that the Grand Slam tour will be when we possibly see him available. And again, it's going to be frustrating because 3 tests are in the window, 1's not in the window. So you'll play 3 tests and not be in the 4th one. So that's the way World Rugby is. So we get him for 3 tests essentially for the year. So you get maybe 3 good weeks, and then you're trying to find a solution again for something else.
And there's our break. Yeah, I don't know what the solution is, but I'm not confident we're gonna see him.
Now, Harry, I've got one to throw at you here. Are you a fan of the Batuta Advocate?
The what advocate?
Have you heard of it? No,
Batuta Advocate. It's a wonderful publication in Australia. Their sporting headline today was "World's Most Annoying Accent Has a Good Weekend in Perth."
How's your laugh, Perth?
Yes.
And it went on to say, known for its extremely harsh nasal tones and silly, sharp inflections.
Yeah.
That's how it presented the South African accent.
The inflections are very harsh. Harsh. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting when I see the relationship between Aussie-based Saffers and then Saffers abroad and Saffers at home. It's very weird. I think everyone that moved there always talks glowingly about how wonderful Australia is, but they seem to have a perverse pleasure in reminding everyone that they're not so Australian. So I don't know how long that goes. Is it two generations or three?
Follow-up question here. What do South Africans in South Africa think of your accent now?
Well, I've always had American parentage. So I've always had a very questionable. I remember in standard A being told by the teacher that I was speaking wrong. You're speaking wrong. You must change how you talk. And being put in the banana group, which was below the apple group and the peach group and the grape group in speaking and reading. So no, I've always been a remedial student. It's interesting when you see the evolution of a Safa accent loss, whether it's Charlize Theron or Dave Matthews or Elon Musk, your friend Brett. It's interesting which ones survive, which are the hard ones to get rid of, and which ones sort of go quickly. Even Dricus du Plessis was not doing the can't anymore; he was going with can't. So it just depends on how long you stay somewhere, and it just sort of bleeds away. Except for Ernie Els, who never changed one iota.
No, he's not. A shout out to a YouTube commenter a few weeks ago who said, "What's that accent of Harry's?" And I could only reply, "We don't know." Who knows?
So this cross-border accent.
As much as I would love to devote, significant amounts of time to what's left of your accent, the Wallabies now head to Argentina. Jim, I mentioned Hunter Paisami will definitely miss it. What are the obvious concerns going ahead for this tour?
Oh, and that is one. Hamish Stewart has been training consistently with the team, so it might be a situation where, like, he's a real meat and potatoes centre where he just does a lot of good things. He'll always do his tackling. He's improved his distribution. He puts in 110% every game he plays. He's an experienced guy with 100 Super Rugby games behind him now. So you could see Hamish Stewart playing at inside centre and blocking up that channel in a really mature way. That wouldn't be the worst call, and he certainly had sort of 4 or 5 weeks or longer in Joe Schmidt's camps to know all the systems. So that might be the easiest solution and perhaps a good one right in front of our faces.
Yeah, he's certainly been close. I saw him part of the warm-up in Sydney and fairly heavily involved there. So that was the first Wales test, in fact. So it's obviously only been more since that. Harry might even be a smoky for 10. He could even be the perfect number 22 on the bench, and that's not to actually downplay his chances of starting at 12, but he could be the perfect midfield cover off the bench too.
As we well know, and I have proved empirically and emphatically, the best 10 for you is Tane Edmed playing at North Harbour and smashing it up against the likes of Sean Stevenson and fields full of All Blacks. Tane is the new darling of North Harbour, and you guys need to watch some of his games. I'm serious. I started this as a kind of a joke, and now I'm really starting to believe my own bullshit. No, Tane's a good player. I'm not trying to make fun of him at all. I do think that we haven't found the kind of 10 that Joe Schmidt enjoyed in Ireland. But I mean, how often do you find a Johnny Sexton? But even a poor man's Johnny Sexton, I think maybe that's one of the things that he's still trying to figure out. And then also, who's his Peter O'Mahony. So, I think Joe Schmidt's a patient man. I think Sarah Uru, Isaac Kalia, Matt Fessler, and Angus Blythe didn't have their best showings. But some of those guys, I think Joe will want to see some more from, because it's one thing to play against the Springboks in a bad mood, and there's another thing to maybe be able to play against, Gaijo and Montoya, who sometimes are moody and have up and downs. The test landscape is diverse.
Yeah, I think we will see. I don't know that we'll see a lot of chopping and changing, Jim, but I think there'll be a chance for a lot of these guys to go again. I'm fully, and based on what he said post-match, I'm fully expecting him to leave Bolosio at 10. And the fact that Tom Liner is maybe doesn't go to Argentina probably reinforces that.
I think Joe Schmidt's only direction has to be to pick and stick. Like he's made choices around who he thinks are the best players, and to get any combinations, he's just got to keep going with them. I think we've seen it with Harry Wilson and Valentini. He's happy to have them in the back row, and I think when McWright's fit, he'll just slide straight back in there. He's just getting a bit closer to what his best locks are. He's been a bit challenged health-wise in the front row. So he's got Ikitau there. He's got Korobedi on the wing. He likes to ride at fullback. So there's a lot of areas where players just have to play that bit better to lift the level. Now, Argentina's going to be a really tricky side. Like, the reason they made so many World Cup semi-finals is because their game's based on having adults in the pack, like big, hairy, backed, bearded forwards who are just elite forwards. That's why you can compete against the All Blacks. That's why you can sometimes challenge the Springboks all the way and beat very good top-tier teams. They've got a good forward pack. And the Wallabies will have two very tough tests in Argentina.
Yeah, no question about that. I think Taniela Tupou will come back. Nick Frost will come back. Jeremy Williams, I think, will come back as well. Is Fraser McWright a chance of making the tour? Jim, are you hearing anything locally there in Brisbane that he might be fit for the second test?
I think it'd be tricky. I think it's more likely the All Black block of matches, really.
Yeah, which you get another week after that. After
that
tour,
for Fraser, just with the time frame for his thumb.
Yeah. What do you want to see, Harry?
In Argentina, probably less excuses. I think Joe is such a grown-up man that he's not going to want to have condescension and low expectations or honeymoons. I think he wants to be judged by wins, and Australia has to beat Argentina. In other words, you can say all you like about noticing incremental changes from Brisbane to Perth against the Boks, but the real competition for a 9th ranked team is to knock off the teams right above them. It's just that's incremental. That's like being on a tennis ladder at your local club, and you go, I'm going to beat number 6 and then 5, number 4. And so I would think it's also in rugby about winning and losing. It's not just internal outcomes and winning this battle, that battle. That's all coach speak. In reality, how they get paid, how they get fired, how they get elevated, and how they get legacy is they take a team that is not so good and make it better. So I think Joe Schmidt's, there was a look at it. I think it was about the 70th minute, and there was this great shot of him looking. I think the Boks were doing another exotic, innovative thing where Marty LeBuc was playing in a diamond tip behind Andre Pollard and doing things. And he looked at it, and you could just see his eyes burning into the field and going, I want to be that good. I want my team to be playing like that. So I would suspect we're going to see something more that looks like what Joe wants. I think it was survival mode a little bit in Brisbane, and I just think, and then the rain was crazy in Perth. So I think this one, I think we'll see for the first time in the Schmidt era what Schmidt wants from the Wallabies. I'm always wondering is he doing a lab experiment where he's like, I'm not going to have any overseas players except for Korobedi, but I just want to see, and then I'll decide where I have to fill in. I don't know, Jim. What do you think? Is it a hard and fast rule, or is he just playing the cards he's dealt?
Well, there's not a great many players that they improve the depth of the squad, but the frontline 15, do they improve it? Like Samu Karevi, you could say, okay, we'll go back to Samu. He's a full-hearted player. He turned up and played sevens at the Olympics. Like he gives everything for Australia. But is there a time where you sort of move beyond Samu? I'd like to see Will Skelton for those matches in the Northern Hemisphere because he is a proper lock where people fear what he not what he could possibly do, but what he's actually done in his resume. He is a top flight lock. Like there's not a halfback or a 5'8" lurking overseas, Harry. That's the simple fact of it. Like you're talking about where you're looking. Like you've got the guys that you can deal with in Australia. They've all got attributes. All of them have to play more consistently to be test players.
Yeah,
like elite test players and winning tests. So that's the step the team's got to take. I don't think Joe Schmidt came in and he has never promised that everything would work out in 5 tests and we're the finished article. Like he's got a really good season this year. Then might get some good results in Argentina. Might be a little bit of pain against the All Blacks. Then he's got that, as you say, the ladder over in the UK in the Grand Slam Tour, where he's got Wales again, he's got Ireland, he's got England, he's got Scotland. You could win three of those 4 legs, and then suddenly you are climbing up the tree.
Yeah, that Scotland match is big in that sense because you beat Scotland at home. I think you do jump a spot at least. You know,
the order of that tour is England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland for what it's worth. So yeah, it's a couple of early wins,
opportunities. You don't fall by losing to Ireland in Ireland, but you do jump if you beat Scotland, and you think you'd win against Wales. I don't know where Wales sits right now, but
beat England at Twickenham too. It's a big.
And you've got a couple of tour games there. Like I'm really delighted they've got a couple of tour games. They've got I think one against the Bristol Bears, and there'll be another one against another side as well. Which is terrific because that's what Australia's been lacking.
Yeah, that Australia, that Bristol game though, I think it's the Friday night before the England test though. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it fits.
Just getting players more football.
Yeah, it builds depth, and
which is definitely
as you pointed out so many times, Brett. It's the dearth of games for the top players. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Before
you'll have a view on this. You'll have a view on this, Harry, but. Like if people talk about the Springboks pulling guys in from overseas, and one of the values of that, it's not the mere fact of selecting their best players, but there's so many players who've had experiences playing in France, playing in England, and they brought back those experiences into the Bok team to make the Bok team better. Like all the Australian players you talk to who played in France or England have got something out of it. Kurtley Beale and James O'Connor got that patience and the value of the kick. Isaac Rodder just got a greater mentality about what tight 5 forward play really was when you're in France. Lots of little incremental gains from players who played overseas or gone to the NPC. So the Springboks are actually reveling in all the upgrade of knowledge and skill and worldliness they've got from playing in other competitions.
Such a good point because it's not just it's the mentality. You know, if you have Willie Le Roux, Pieter-Steph, Kwacha, Creel, Faf playing in Japan, they came back such well-rounded players, and their fitness levels were through the roof. And so Lucan has talked about it being in England. You know, there's just something you can get by playing in England week after week after week that you cannot get in Australia. So instead of viewing it as a difficulty of wedding it all together, Rossi and his guys said, this is IP. And they do a really good job of throughout the year, because he has his actual squad picked. Throughout the year, they're on WhatsApp groups. They're not just, showing videos of refs. They're actually showing videos of games. And they're breaking down games. Yeah, they're breaking down games. That's how it happened on the Vimeo. So they're breaking games down, and they're actually creating, a guy like Dwayne Vermeulen is a good example of now he's coaching, and he's instrumental of understanding these different types of setups. So it's no longer the old, boring, kind of brainless box. This is a very brainy Bok team.
Yeah,
you saw it on display, innovative.
They're a very smart team. Yeah, there's no question, and we've said it fairly consistently over the last 3 weeks or a month, Harry. This is the stereotypes about South Africa's play from even 10 years ago just do not fit anymore, and it's sort of it's shown up some ignorance amongst Australian fans that those same stereotypes are being trotted out. So yeah, it's been interesting. It's been interesting. It's been fantastic. It's been wonderful, Jim, to have you back on the 8-9. It's been a wonderful chat as always. It's been great to reconnect with you. I suspect that we will definitely do this again before the year's out. Thanks
Come
so
back.
much thanks so much for saying
And
yes.
I'll be back. I want to hear about a bit more of your heritage and run through your top 10 beers from the Pacific Northwest, and then we'll go to the top 10 Texas beers
Yes.
and do a full slate.
Now we're talking.
There's a bonus rugby podcast right there. Good on you, Jim. Thanks very much, mate.
My pleasure.
Cheers.
This is the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast with Brett McKay and Harry Jones. And, mate, so good to welcome our old post-mortem mate, the great Jim Tucker, onto the 8-9 for the first time. So
Jim's
good.
salt of the earth. Jim is the kind of guy you want to hang out with on a tour, you want to have breakfast with, talk to him about anything in the world. He's not just a rugby brain guy. He's an interesting fella who knows a lot about a lot of things.
Yeah, no doubt at all. It's been very, very good. A very, very quick whip around the grounds with not a whole lot of rugby being played around the world. Currently, the NPC is underway in New Zealand, and notable, I think, last weekend for Otago beating Auckland after a lost first round, and Tasman beating Canterbury, the old Crusaders. Rivals, teammates, housemates. I'm not quite sure how that works, but a good little South Island derby there. The Curry Cup ticks along, mate. Do we need to talk about Western Province, or would you prefer we moved on? Move on? Okay. So the Sharks too good for the Cheetahs, the Greekers. I just love saying the Greekers. They're going all right, aren't they?
Just if you want to know, you have to say the Griquas.
Griquas.
It's literally what quagga is based on, the animal. Just another little tidbit.
The quagga, as in little Western Australian marsupial?
No,
or are you talking about the South African back rower?
Yeah, exactly. There's actually this weird varietal of a zebra that is like a horse mated with a zebra, and it's very difficult to tame and ride. But that's what the Griquas are all about. And then it also refers to a group of people. Yeah.
Oh, okay, there you go. The Bulls leading Pool A. The Lions leading Pool. The Lions leading.
The flippin' Bulls.
Yes, Western Province not going great. Games of the week is on ice this week, as is the Test match post-mortem, but both will be back when the Rugby Championship resumes the following week. So make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and make sure you do not miss a minute through the tournament from us here at the 8-9. The biggest headline story, I think, of the last 7 days, mate, is World Rugby announcing a fairly major format shake-up for the next Rugby World Cup 2027 in Australia. 24 teams. So it feels like we're going down the FIFA route now. The way to grow the international game is to literally offer more spots to international teams.
Yeah, but then it has knock-on effects about the pool's not being very competitive. So if you're in the top 6, I think at a certain date, whenever that date is, then those 6 teams will really not significantly face anything in the pools, which means that on composition of squad and how you play it, you can do some strategy. All we know is that when it gets to the round of 8, Ireland's going to be probably doing the same old thing, but at least they have a round of 16. They can win a knockout.
Yes, match. that's the big difference, isn't it? So we go to 6 pools of 4 teams, and then with a round of 16 added before the quarterfinals. So the top 2 from each pool will qualify along with the next 4 third-place finishes. So, it'll be interesting to see what the qualification process looks like. I wouldn't say this has been universally well accepted.
It's always there's a strategic plan in the background. There's investment money tied up in some of this. World Rugby has its giant map of domination that Sir Bill Beaumont told us didn't exist, but I'm sure it does.
It definitely does.
Stands around. It's one of those almost World War II movies, when you place little things everywhere, tanks. So I think there's just some grounds. I would say the Americas, in the Spanish-speaking part of the Americas, is super fertile ground for rugby. And who knew? Who predicted that, 10, 15 years ago? It just turns out that there's a lot more bigger bodies. A lot of people want to play a different sport than football, and they already have the ball playing skills. And I think it's almost the translation also is that in the exclusive schools, private schools in Mexico, in Colombia, in Peru, in Chile, rugby is almost a distinguishing feature. Like, no, we're not a soccer school, we're a rugby school. And it immediately it gives you cachet in Latin America.
It's certainly been suggested that this is one way to get North America particularly interested again in rugby. If 24 teams mean that you would expect the USA and Canada would both qualify after missing out. They're both outside the top 16 currently, but they would back themselves to get there, I suppose. But a round of 16 means that the Wallabies are ranked 9 at the moment, but Fiji are 10, Wales are 11, Georgia 12, Samoa 13, Japan 14, Portugal 15, Tonga 16. And then just outside that, you've got Uruguay, Spain, the USA, Romania. That's the top 20. So, it'd be interesting to see what it does.
Yeah, it's not complicated. In the Olympic sevens, a woman player went from not known to 3 million followers. And so winning in moments that are photogenic capture American tastes and they explode. That's why the women's soccer team is perennially the best in the world. And you could say, but is soccer going to take hold in America? Being one in the world forever and ever is. So rugby has a chance because it's going to be front and center. It's just going to have moments, and you just have to have one, whatever the American version of DuPont is, comes along. And there's always that chance because you have the incredible athlete base in the 350 million person country.
Who was the seven speedster from the
Perry Baker?
No, I reckon it's a few years before that. He was quick. The guy burnt Habana at a World Cup.
He was from Zimbabwe. Yeah,
he plays. There's an American guy. If you're listening and you're watching and you know the clip I'm talking about, please hit us up on the socials and correct us and remind me of who I'm talking about. I'm certain it's an American guy.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he lives in Dallas, and one of my friends played against him recently, and he's still, playing in sort of second grade level.
I reckon
he never was a wonderful rugby player, but he was bloody quick.
Yeah, I reckon we're talking
still is.
2007, 2011 World Cup. Like, we're going back a good way. Anyway, someone will know what I'm talking about. Final thoughts, mate, for the week. What have you got for me?
Oh man, I just think it's like one of those weekends where I'm exhausted. I went full bore. I went from middle of the night watching Perth Fontaine and then watching Eben and Drickus. I think at the end of the night it was midnight, so it was just a long. It was just winning. I was so tired of winning.
Yeah, and yet your humility stays rock solid the whole way. But that then is episode 28 of the 8-9 Combo done. Check the show notes for the links to the 8-9 Combo on Twitter and YouTube, where you will find video versions of the podcast every week, and where we've gained more than 300 new subscribers since the first weekend of the Rugby Championship. So welcome all of you, and thank you. And leave us a rating or review wherever you can. And if you are Spotify, if you are subscribed to us on Spotify, jump into your settings and make sure your auto download is on, and then you don't have to worry about forgetting. It'll just be there, ready and waiting for you. Harry and I remain on the socials in our usual places at Harry Baldy Jones and at BMC Sport. You find links on us in socials as well, and in the show notes for Harry's written work on the Raw, including a good piece coming up this week about the Wallabies.
And it's entitled Humpty Dumpty, which is weird.
It is. It's that will be a good read. You'll find my weekly Australian columns on RugbyPass as well, where I have talked about incremental improvements and needing to see them continuing. And don't forget, head to RugbyPass.tv, where you can see the 2019 series of Chasing the Sun, the documentary series celebrating South Africa's Rugby World Cup title back in 2019. And then with the 2023 series, Chasing the Sun 2, coming soon. Sign up for free and watch it wherever you are in the rugby world. This is the 8-9 combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed, coming from the podcast double act you already had. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones. And we'll be back in your ears next week with another friend of the pod, former Argentinian setter Marcelo Bosch.
Cello, come play with us.